I told you to make that appointment for today. Can't you get that through that thick skull of yours?
You look different, Jane. Have you put on some more weight?
Well, no, I don't think so.
Well, your friend Betty certainly has. Have you seen the size of that woman lately?
Well, I thought I showed you how to fix it last week. Come on, you're doing it all wrong. Let me show you. I know all about these things.
Wait a minute. I did what you told me to, and it still stalls.
Here, give me that screwdriver. You gotta get it adjusted just right. It's really a simple procedure if you know what you're doing.
Is there someone you know who's hard to get along with? Well, for the better part of the next hour, I'm going to show you why difficult people behave the way they do, and give you some step-by-step methods for dealing with them developed by Dr. Robert M. Bramson. And after watching this video, I feel certain you'll be able to better deal with the difficult people in your life. People learn to be difficult because it works for them. Consequently, it programs us to behave in certain ways. They can bring out the worst in you and often destroy your motivation, self-confidence, and effectiveness. So stop wishing the difficult person were different and learn to deal with them. Coping enables you and that difficult person to get on with the business at hand. And in addition to that, it will keep you from feeling helplessly frustrated. There's some really tough, almost impossible people out there. So what makes them difficult? A difficult person's troublesome behavior is habitual and affects most of the people with whom they come in contact. They are seen as problems by just about everyone. The good thing is, there aren't a lot of them. In a typical group, you are likely to find less than 10% being really difficult people. But that 10% causes more than 50% of the stress. Dr. Bramson and his associates have observed and questioned hundreds of people. They found that the same kinds of behavior patterns were identified over and over again. Dr. Bramson determined that there are 7 major difficult personality types. First, the most difficult to deal with, the hostile aggressives. There are 3 types of hostile aggressives. Sherman tanks, who bully and push their way. Snipers, who strike with negative remarks and criticize you with sarcasm and humor. And exploders, who are composed one minute and out of control the next. The second difficult personality type is the complainer, who whines at you about everything, but never tries to do anything about it. Number 3 is the clam. Clams are silent and unresponsive. Number 4, the super agreeables. People who are super nice and outgoing, but always seem to let you down when you need them most. Number 5, the negativists. People who say no to practically everything. Number 6 is the expert know-it-alls. They love to tell you their facts and figures and show you they're always right. And the 7th difficult personality type is the indecisive, who can't make a decision. They usually wait until it's made for them. Let's start with the hostile aggressives. First, the Sherman tank. People who come at you. They are intimidating, overwhelming, and arrogant. When criticizing something you've said or done, they seem to attack not just the particular behavior, but you. They say things like,
That's the stupidest thing I ever heard. Do you realize that?
They use their physical presence and confidence to intimidate other people they feel lack these qualities. Sherman tanks are super aggressive people who base their decisions on facts of the moment, what they see, hear, and think now. And once they make a decision, they have a need to prove to themselves and to others that their view is right. They get impatient with those who don't see it their way. And this impatience turns quickly to anger.
He left an hour ago for Chicago.
What do you mean he isn't here? I came all the way across town just to see him, and you tell me he isn't here. How could you make such a dumb mistake?
Well, I checked Mr. Hart's calendar, and you're down for next week. I'm sure that he'll be...
Oh, come on. Stop lying. Well, what are you going to do about it? Hello? Is there anyone in there? Answer me.
I really don't know...
What's your name? I want you to know the president of this company is a very good friend of mine, and I'm going to make sure he knows what kind of idiots he's got working for him.
The first rule of coping with anyone aggressive is to stand up to that person. But don't get into an argument over who is right or who is to be the winner. Sherman tanks can never give in. And if you happen to win, they'll plot to get even. Standing up to them is not the same as fighting with them. Here are some good words to use to stand up to them.
Mr. Johnson, I disagree with you. Now, in my opinion, looks like we see it differently. Okay, what's our next step?
So instead of saying,
Mr. Johnson, you're wrong.
those are fighting words, say,
Sounds like our facts just don't fit.
and if that person has power over you, you could follow up with,
But why don't you tell me more about what's on your mind?
it's useful to start off any conversation with a Sherman tank by calling them by name, like Mr. Jones, for that sets them up for the second all-purpose method. They're interrupters. Their minds work very quickly and they know how you're going to finish a sentence, so they come in and cut you off. And the moment they do, you look them in the eye and say,
Mr. Johnson, you interrupted me.
not don't interrupt me, because those are fighting words. You'll be interrupted again, and when you are, repeat the statement,
Mr. Johnson, you interrupted me.
oh, and another thing is, once you've stood up to a Sherman tank, be ready to be friendly. Once a tank sees you're strong and has learned to respect you, they often want to be your buddy.
Well, I've checked Mr. Hart's calendar and you're down for next week. I'm sure he'll be back in time.
Stop lying and making excuses.
Mr. Johnson, you interrupted me. I was about to say that if you'll give me a chance to call his beeper, I may be able to reach him before he gets
This
on
is
the plane.
outrageous. The president of this company is a good friend of mine, and he's going to hear all about it.
I'll tell you what. Why don't you have a seat and we'll wait for Mr. Hart to call back so we can get the facts.
No, I'd rather stand.
It's fine if you prefer.
I can't believe this.
Mr. Johnson, I understand how you feel, but I think we need to wait and hear Mr. Hart's side of the story. So will you please have a seat?
You mean it is next week? If my people got it wrong, heads are going to roll. What? Well, sure, I can stick around. Thanks, buddy. Guess what? He's coming back. Say, what'd you say your name was?
Our second hostile aggressive is the sniper. Snipers are similar to Sherman tanks because they have a very strong sense of how others ought to think and act, and they have to prove they're right. But they maintain a cover from behind which they take pot shots at you. That cover is given to them by their victims, who pretend that nothing bad is really happening, and the victim doesn't want to cause a scene. They smile a lot at the sniper's jokes, along with everyone else. Let's see how a sniper operates.
I'd invited Betty tonight, but she wasn't able to make it.
Well, it's probably a good thing. That way there'll be some food left for the rest of us.
Who made these cookies? I did. Do you like them?
Well, yes, if you can bite into them without chipping a tooth. Just kidding, of course. Did you take insurance out on these?
Always a funny word.
The first thing to do with a sniper is to smoke them out. Without a camouflage that works, sniping just isn't possible. Try to deal with them when there is no one else around. Snipers, as well as Sherman tanks, play to the crowd. It's harder for your dealing methods to work with other people around. Sometimes you have no choice, but it's easier this way.
Susan, do you remember when you started saying all those funny things about my food and my friend Betty? Well, you are a very witty person, Susan, but I thought I heard a dig in what you were saying, and what I want to know is, do you mean it that way?
You always end with that question, did you mean it that way? What you're doing is facing the sniper with a dilemma which she will not like at all. Either she has to come out openly and say,
Yes, I did mean it. Your cookies are terrible.
or she may deny the attack.
Oh, no, Jane, I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. These are great cookies.
You have taken away the power to snipe by taking away the camouflage. You're moving behind the joke and asking her about what her intention is. Almost always, snipers will stop their sniping for a while, but they are likely to start up again and see if it still works. So you must deal with them every time they snipe and show them you're not going to lay off. But be prepared for two ploys. Ploy number 1
What's the matter, Jane? Can't you take a joke?
and ploy number 2.
Oh, Jane, you're too sensitive.
This sets you up as a victim right there, and she'll come back and hit you every time. So the next time the sniper tries either of those ploys, you look her in the eye and say,
Yeah, Susan, I know you said it as if it were a joke, and it was kind of funny, but I thought I heard a dig in what you said. What I want to know is, did you really mean it that way? And by the way, I thought I just heard another dig in what you just said about me being sensitive, and I want to know, did you mean that way?
don't let them get away with it. That's the lesson with snipers. Okay. The third hostile aggressive is the exploder. Exploders are pretty scary people. They yell at you, cut you down, and insult you. Exploders seem out of control, and actually they are out of control. They're caught up in an adult tantrum, a grown-up version of defense tactics learned in childhood. People explode when they feel helplessly frustrated or threatened, and at the same time feel pushed to take some kind of action. These tantrums still work for them in the short run, just like they did as a child. Because if you are at the receiving end of an explosion, chances are you become silent, passive, or furious.
I think we need to make an aggressive response. Everyone should come up with their own idea for our own campaign. We'll call in all the chips we've got out, and then we'll make our move. Well, what do you think?
Well, let me ask you this. I think sometimes we can make something big out of nothing. Wouldn't we be better off holding fire for a while?
Oh, you think so?
Yeah, I think you're right. I remember 3 years ago, they tried a saturation campaign, just ran out of gas. Let's just not get all excited.
What's wrong with you people? Don't you have any common sense? You'd never get anything done at all if I didn't push you all the time. Oh, just get out of here. Well, don't just sit there looking stupid. Get out! I'll deal with this myself, as usual.
Now, the first thing to do when someone's exploded at you is to do nothing. Nothing but look the exploder in the eye. Remember, it's important that you keep this stance in dealing with any kind of hostile, aggressive person. But let that exploder run down. Almost always, they will run down. You're helping them regain their self-control, and often they will reach a stopping point and become completely silent. It helps to do anything you can to tell them that you take them seriously. What is important here is that you deal with that threat, and you may have no idea what that threat is. You know, in fact, you may not have even been the person who did the threatening. It may have been something that the person's spouse or someone else said that pushed the exploder's button. Try to find some privacy by suggesting that you go to an office or for a walk. The break will allow you both to cool off. Then try to get the facts about what happened. Confusion about facts can be very threatening at times. If you can, offer some kind of concrete help right away, but be realistic. Don't offer something you can't follow through on. That will make the situation worse. Or have a plan of action and be sure to tell the exploder what you're going to do. Your offer to help will often boost them out of their feelings of being under attack.
I remember 3 years ago, they tried a saturation campaign. It just ran out of gas. So let's just not get all excited, okay?
What's wrong with you people? Don't you have any common sense? You'd never get anything done at all if I didn't push you all the time. All right, just get out of here. I'm the only one that cares about this place.
Excuse me a minute, Jim. I think there's been a misunderstanding.
Oh, you finally noticed.
I think we need to talk about this campaign. Tell you what, could we take a break now and then come back later for a planning session?
All right. Everyone back here in 15 minutes.
Okay. Can you and I talk about this right now, Jim? I think this is very important to us. Okay?
All right.
It's absolutely essential that you get in and make a statement like,
I understand that this is really important. I want to hear what you have to say, but not this way. Okay?
Okay.
the second type of difficult person is the complainer. Their sentences are connected with ands and buts that flow without pause. Their whining tone blames and accuses. Complainers feel as if they have little control over their lives. From this passive view, all that goes well is attributed to good luck or favors from others. Complaining keeps them appearing blameless, innocent, and morally perfect, at least to themselves. But they did their part by telling what's wrong. It's up to you to solve their problem.
That coach is awful rough on those boys. He pushes them too hard. I don't think it's so important for him to win every game. Save it for the World Series, don't you agree?
I suppose.
But every parent around here would agree with me. Something ought to be done about it.
Well, I think he's trying to do his best.
Well, he ought to be trying to make baseball fun. And I mean for all the boys. My kid's been on the bench all season. You tell me why the only time my kid gets to bat is when they're 12 runs ahead. Look at him. I get him here a few minutes late for the suit-up. His uniform doesn't even fit. That coach is really something. He's got the batting order all wrong. He doesn't have his fielders set deep enough, and there isn't one kid on that team knows how to slide properly.
The first thing to do is listen actively and acknowledge that you understand what they're complaining about. You do this by paraphrasing back to them what you think they've said to you. Don't agree that the complaints are correct, even if you think they are. This can be hard since there's usually some substance to complainers' accusations. But agreeing won't stop the complaining. It makes them complain even more. And don't apologize either.
Well, look, I want you to know I'm really sorry.
Because they'll say something like,
well, you ought to be sorry. Let me tell you what else that coach is doing wrong.
your best bet with complainers is to get them into a problem-solving mode. But it's hard because they're not used to problem-solving. So ask specific problem-solving questions.
So, when did you first notice this? Well, do all the parents really feel the same way about this?
You can also help out the situation by assigning simple tasks to the complainer. For example, ask them to put the complaints in writing and give them a deadline. Try to do this in a supportive way. If you can, involve them in the solution steps.
Okay. Do you have any ideas?
Don't be disappointed when they don't. Remember, they expect that solving problems is your job, not theirs. But it sets them up for a technique that works most of the time with complainers.
Look, Jerry, it's now 5:45. I have to leave and go home at 6 o'clock. That means we have 15 more minutes to talk about this. Now, where would you like to be in 15 minutes? Where do you want this discussion to end? I mean, what do you want to accomplish?
It's that question that gets positive action from complainers. Here's their most common response.
Gee, I don't know. I guess I want that coach to give all the boys a fair shake.
Now you go right back to your problem-solving questions.
I guess I can understand how you feel, but has anyone talked directly to the coach about this?
But this time they're much more likely to stay with you at that problem-solving level because they've invited you to problem-solve. Or they may give you an even more interesting response. They'll stare at you for a second, scratch their heads, and...
Well, I don't know, but I gotta go. I got things to do back at the office.
In other words, they'll stop complaining at you and go off and complain at other people. Well, that's not so great, but it's better than they're complaining at you. Remember, what you hope for from these techniques is not to change those impossible people, but merely to deal with them. Now, the third difficult personality type is the silent, unresponsive clam. They clam up just when you need an answer or want some real conversation. People keep silent for a variety of reasons. Some are silent because they are confused. They just don't know how to answer. Some because they are withholding communication from you, achieving power over you by not giving you what you want. Still, others clam up because they know that if they don't say anything, they are then free to sabotage what is being talked about between the two of you. And then there are those concentrated people who are silent because they really aren't aware of what's going on at all.
So, given that information, what do you think?
Well, it might work.
Do you think you can have it done by Friday?
I really don't know.
I want to get going on that Hampton project. Do you have any ideas on that one?
Well, maybe.
Good. Let's get on it right away, okay? Okay?
Okay.
Do you have any ideas you want to discuss?
Not really, I guess. Is it okay if I get back to work now?
Sure.
So obviously, the first thing to do when you run into an unresponsive person is to get them to talk so you can figure out what's going on. You start the conversation, perhaps with a little chit-chat to put them at ease. Then say a little bit about the topic you're interested in, their performance, for example. Then pause and throw out an open-ended question like,
So what's your reaction to what I just said? Will you take some time to tell me how you feel about that? Please, if you will,
run a little movie in your mind and describe it to me.
While you wait for them to react, it's important that you go into your own silent stance so that the silence works for you. The stance is called the friendly silent stare. Sit forward in your chair, raise your eyebrows, look expectant as you can, and wait for an answer. But remember, don't make conversation. That's what clams have counted on for years to get them through difficult social situations. But do comment on the silent treatment you've received. Make it a question, however, not an accusation.
Brad, as I said before, I want to get going on this Hampton project. I thought we were going to have a conversation about it. You haven't said anything. What's happening?
Not much.
Talk to me, will you?
If they still don't open up, end the meeting and indicate your intention to raise the subject again. But don't be too polite about it.
Okay, Brad. Looks as if we're getting no place on this right now. This is too important of an issue for me to just let drop. Can we have a meeting tomorrow afternoon, 2 o'clock? Check your calendar and call me. See you later.
Often this is when the clam will open up.
Well, wait a minute. I guess I do have some ideas.
Good. Now, the fourth type of difficult person is the super agreeable. Super agreeables are people who agree to do absolutely anything you ask them to do. The problem is they just don't do it.
Hey, Charlie. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Fine.
Good.
Listen, is that report I need going to be done on Monday?
Monday? I'll have it to you on Friday. You can count on me.
Good.
Of course, Friday comes around and the report's not ready. What you get instead of a report is this.
Charlie, that report I needed, is it done yet?
Hey, buddy, you know I really meant to do it, but things came up. You know how it is, Raj. But listen, I promise I'll get it to you. Remember, you can count on me.
Okay.
Oh, I wanted to ask you, how's Ann and the kids?
As you can see, super agreeables have strong needs to be liked and accepted. And rather than risk losing your friendship or approval, super agreeables will commit themselves to actions on which they can't follow through. Then, to avoid anger or rejection, they work hard at making you feel liked and approved of. After all, isn't it hard to get mad at someone who's so nice? To get to the bottom of things, you have to break through the fluff and find out what's really on their minds.
Charlie, I appreciate the fact that you're trying to get this project done for me, and I know how busy you've been. Is there anything I can do to help you out?
Well, I just...
Now, I really want to know.
No, I can handle it. I really can, and I'll have it for you first thing Monday morning. Trust me.
Now, wait a minute. Look, I know you have a lot of new projects on the line, but let's be candid. You're not getting this project done like you promised you would. Now, what are you going to do about it?
I really don't know what to do.
Let's sit down and we'll come up with a realistic plan.
Okay.
It's when they feel personal acceptance from you that they can afford to realistically deal with the facts of the situation. In other words, it helps them be honest. One extra tip. Super agreeables like win-win compromises that satisfy some needs of both sides of a controversy. If you offer a compromise right away, they'll relax, and you'll save a lot of time dealing with their fancy footwork later. Next, on to some people who say no to almost everything. Our fifth group, the negativist. Negativists are pessimists. They can tear down our morale and will to win because they tap the potential for despair that's in all of us. Like complainers, they believe that they have little control over their own lives. Worse, they are convinced that people who do have power can't be trusted. But let's find out more from the horse's mouth. We have a negativist right here.
I don't know what you hope to accomplish with all this. It's not a good idea. It's just not going to work.
We just want to find out how you feel about some different things. That way people will know how to deal with you.
It won't work. You know that, don't you?
Will you sit down? How would you sum up your philosophy of life?
You really want to know? Okay. Expect the worst, and you won't be disappointed.
Why are you so negative about everything?
Because you can always count on people to let you down.
That's so depressing.
Life's depressing.
Why do you like to bring everyone around you down?
Because everybody is so full of big ideas and high hopes. I just tell it like it really is.
You mean the way you see it?
That's the way it is.
You know, that could really make people depressed.
I just want everyone to be as miserable as I am. I'm sorry.
Thank you. The most important step when dealing with a negativist is something you do for yourself. When a negativist says those dampening things, you must come back with a positive, but realistic statement of your own. By the way, you never argue with negativists. You will never win that argument because their negativism comes from a long, long time ago. Don't try to persuade negativists to admit they're wrong. In fact, acknowledge what they say. Excuse me. You know, you're probably right about everything you said, but, you know, I used to think life was depressing, and then I started adding up all the positives, and I realized I was a pretty lucky person.
Well...
Why do you do that? You do it because you need to keep yourself from being dragged down. And if you're resolving a problem with a group of people, making that positive but realistic statement will help those other people stay in the problem-solving game, in the productive, forward-looking, planning perspective that is so valuable. And try to show alternatives. Don't rush into proposing solutions until the problem has been thoroughly discussed. If it's a one-on-one conversation, do what is known as building a horror floor. That is, asking what is the worst that can happen if a plan is implemented. Building a horror floor helps negativists because it exposes all those horrible things that just might occur by making them state them and bring them out into the open. Let me show you. Excuse me. I know you don't think this interview is leading anywhere, but let me ask you this one question. What is the worst thing that could happen?
Well...
Finally, in dealing with negativists, always be ready to take action on your own. This also keeps you from being dragged down. It affirms your intention to do something, and often it will get offers of help from others, including the negativist.
Okay. Probably no one's going to watch this. Still don't know why you picked me, but if it'll help your video, I'll do it.
Well, I'm glad you're willing, because the tape was rolling and the interview is done.
Already? Well, I hope it helps.
The sixth type of difficult person is the know-it-all. Experts who roll over you with facts and figures. There are two kinds of know-it-alls, bulldozers and balloons. Bulldozers are knowledgeable people who have the right answer to a problem. Not any right answer, but the right answer. When you try to talk to them about something in their plans that may not be quite right, they take it as a personal insult, not just someone with a different opinion. Bulldozers feel powerful, and they are quite certain that they don't need others. Someone once said that a group with a bulldozer in it is one brain and 14 hands.
You still having problems with that thing?
Yeah, this piece of junk.
Well, I thought I showed you how to fix it last week. Come on, you're doing it all wrong. Let me show you. I know all about these things.
Wait a minute, I did what you told me to, and it still stalls.
Here, give me that screwdriver. You gotta get it adjusted just right. It's really a simple procedure if you know what you're doing.
The key strategy with these patronizing but very competent people is to get them to consider alternative views while carefully avoiding direct challenges to their expertise. For example, always paraphrase back the main points of what bulldozers have just said to you. If you don't, the real expert know-it-alls will assume you didn't quite understand what they were saying, and they'll re-explain it all to you with great detail. If you have objections, make sure those objections are brought to his or her attention as questions. If you ask questions, you present problems as something new to be considered, and not an attack on the bulldozer's competence. Because they are smart people, bulldozers will often discover their own errors just by talking through the situation. But you must do your homework and get on top of the facts you need, or they will dismiss you as incompetent.
Here, give me that screwdriver again. You gotta get it adjusted just right. It's really a simple procedure if you know what you're doing.
I know you've worked on a lot of engines and you think this is just a simple problem, but listen to me for a minute. Could you explain to me what happens when you tighten that thing? Think about it.
Oh, yeah.
First, do you think it's not getting enough gas? And what about the spark plug? I've already set it at 31 thousandths. And if that's the case, would there be a lot of smoke from the exhaust?
Boy, good question. Maybe it's a loose wire on the magneto. Gee, glad I thought of it.
And finally, know-it-all balloons are phony experts. They are just what the name implies, an object with thin, flexible walls filled with hot air. They read the paper or watch TV and become instant experts. They speak with great authority about subjects of which they have little knowledge. They have a desire to be admired and respected by others, and they really feel that what they're saying is true. Instead of yelling baloney, give a descriptive statement of the facts as you believe them to be. Then provide a means for the know-it-all balloon to save face, and be ready to fill the conversation gap yourself. If possible, it's best to do this when no one else is around.
So, how's your diet coming along?
Pretty good. I've lost 10 pounds so far. But it's hard. You know, I'm such a chocoholic.
I know what you need to do to lose some weight. What you do is multiply your weight times 15. And that gives you the number of calories you need every day. Now that ought to take some of that fat off, huh?
Yeah, you know, that was a good article, Carl. I just read it this morning. Dr. Andrews said in the article that you should multiply your desired weight by 12, not 15 if you're inactive. You multiply it by 15 if you exercise, and 17 if you're very active. You probably remembered 15 because you're a jogger. I just wish that were the case for me.
Yeah, well, I knew there was a 15 in there somewhere.
By the way, how's your boat coming?
Let's turn now to the last of our difficult-to-handle people, indecisive stallers. They are the frustrating folks who simply cannot make up their minds. Sure, they're pleasant and supportive. They listen well, nod their heads encouragingly, and ask lots of easy-to-understand questions. But when the time for action arrives, they don't come through. What stops them is too much concern about other people's feelings. And any important decision has the potential for disappointing someone. We'll find out why in just a minute. We're expecting an indecisive now, but he's late.
Hello.
Hello. Would you like to have a seat?
Oh, yes.
Good. I'd like to ask you some questions.
Well, that's what I'm here for. I want to do anything I can to help you.
Okay. Well, you say you're just coming here from a meeting with your boss. Did you stay at that meeting because you were talking about something important or because you just didn't want to offend your boss?
Oh, you're upset, aren't you?
No, not at all. May I ask you a question?
Oh, yes, anything.
Why does it take you so long to make a decision?
I do that, don't I?
That's what I hear.
But only if they're important decisions.
Is it frustrating to the people around you?
It'd be worse if I went ahead and made the decisions, you know. Some people would win, some people would lose, and they'd get very upset.
Isn't decision-making part of your job sometimes?
To hurt people? I don't think so.
Making a major decision doesn't always lead to someone being hurt, does it?
Sooner or later, it usually does.
So you don't do anything?
Oh, that's not true. I'm as helpful as can be.
I see. Well, how do you handle your problems?
Isn't it amazing how problems will go away if you wait long enough?
Okay. Well, thank you for coming. I guess that's about all.
Anytime you need me, just call.
The first thing you have to do is find out what's really on their indecisive minds. Something is keeping them from deciding. Your problem is that you have no idea what it is. They may give you a lot of information and ask you a lot of questions, but none of this pertains to what's really stopping them. You have to work to help them lay it out for you. The main thing is to make them be honest with you.
Look, Ben, I'm really glad you like the proposal. I mean, you said such nice things about it. But you know, every proposal has some points that are right on the money and other things that aren't as good. What would really help me, Ben, is if you could talk about anything that isn't up to your best expectations. I mean, even if they're very minor things, I'd love to hear them.
Well, okay. Okay, this is very, very good, but there are a couple of little things I'd like to talk to you about. I mean, if you don't mind.
You'll know they aren't just little things at all. Once you get the problems out, you can often propose solutions that will resolve the indecisive's doubts. Remember, when people are stuck with decisions that others care about, they feel torn by the conflict. And as with all of us, when we're too much emotionally aroused, we don't think very well. That's why the indecisive couldn't find his way out of the conflict himself, and why your problem-solving ideas can be so useful in that situation. And give personal support after the decision seems to have been made, either face-to-face or over the telephone. It's your judgment that will help them carry through and implement that difficult decision. One final point. Don't pressure them too hard before you found out what the real objections are. If you do, you'll end up with an emotional decision you both may regret. Well, There they are, the 7 types of hard-to-deal-with personalities. You know who they are, a little bit about why they behave the way they do, and you have some step-by-step methods for dealing with them that can give you better control over yourself and the situation. All that's left is action. To deal with hostile aggressives, if they are Sherman tanks and exploders, stand up to them and state your opinion, but don't argue or cut them down, and be ready to be friendly. And if they're snipers, frequently making digs at you, smoke them out and ask them specifically about their put-down comments. To deal with complainers, listen and acknowledge what they are saying. Don't agree or apologize, and ask questions to solve the problem. To deal with clams, get them talking by asking open-ended questions. Go into a friendly, silent stare. If they don't open up, comment on what's happening and set up another appointment. To deal with super agreeables, find out the facts. Show them you care and value their opinion. To deal with negativists, state your own optimism. Don't argue or rush into a solution. Create a horror floor. To deal with expert know-it-alls, if they are bulldozers, be prepared, listen carefully, and paraphrase the main points. Use questions to make the facts obvious information. If they are know-it-all balloons, present your facts and provide a means for the person to save face. And finally, to deal with indecisives, find out the real reason why they haven't made a decision and propose solutions. Dealing with difficult people does require that you act assertively. The purpose is to further your mutual interests so that you can both get along and function as productively as possible. Let your confidence to deal with these people rest on the knowledge that many people, just like you, have found that coping effectively with difficult people is possible. So now, you can go out and deal with that really tough, difficult person in your life.